The evening light cast a gentle glow over the Cilician coastline, transforming the sea into a shimmering expanse of molten bronze. The air was thick with a mingled sense of salt and wild herbs, their fragrance intensified by the passage of countless marching feet. Alexander led his army, the steady rhythm of Bucephalus's hooves providing a grounding counterpoint to the young king's racing thoughts. Uncertainty lay ahead, a challenge he had anticipated facing, though perhaps not quite so soon. For weeks, the Macedonian army had operated under the assumption that Darius III and his Persian forces were retreating further east into Syria, regrouping and gathering their strength. Then, like a shadow flickering at the edge of perception, word arrived, news that would unsettle even the most battle-hardened veterans. Before we get into main content, please consider subscribing to my channel, giving a like, leaving a comment, and share and support me in bringing more great videos to you. Thank you so much. Darius was behind them. The precise manner in which the great king of Persia had managed to evade the Macedonian scouts remained a perplexing mystery, yet the truth was undeniable. In a move that was both audacious and unexpected, Darius had marched his vast army north, navigating them through treacherous, narrow mountain passes, ultimately positioning himself near the small coastal town of ISSUS. This maneuver placed Alexander and his forces between the Persian army and the sea, a precarious situation that would have spelled disaster for a less capable commander. However, Alexander was no ordinary leader, and the men who followed him were far from ordinary soldiers. Nevertheless, that night, in the stillness before the impending storm, even the most seasoned Macedonian veterans felt a distinct shift in the atmosphere. The tension was not merely the familiar anticipation of battle, but something deeper, a palpable awareness that this conflict transcended a mere step in a long campaign. This was the true commencement, the first real confrontation between Alexander and Darius, the living embodiments of two worlds colliding head-on. As dusk settled, Alexander walked among the flickering campfires. Soldiers sharpened their weapons, meticulously repaired their armor, or engaged in quiet conversations with their comrades. They did not avert their gaze as their king approached. Instead, they greeted him with nods, subtle smiles, gestures that conveyed both humility and affection. Alexander responded to each with genuine warmth. He had always recognized that victory stemmed not solely from his own brilliance, but from the unwavering loyalty of the men who entrusted their lives to his command. He paused near a group of wounded soldiers, men recuperating from skirmishes earlier in the campaign. One was a young recruit, his arm bound tightly to his chest. Upon seeing Alexander approach, he struggled to rise, but Alexander gently placed a hand on his shoulder, pressing him back down. "Rest," Alexander said softly. "Your duty is done for now." The young man swallowed, his eyes reflecting a mixture of exhaustion and awe. Will we face the Persian king tomorrow, my lord?" Alexander nodded, his voice calm and reassuring. "Yes, and we will face him together." He offered no words about the odds, no strategic discourse, no mention of the countless dangers that awaited them. That could all come later. In this moment, all that mattered was reassurance. Simple, human reassurance. As Alexander continued his walk through the camp, he found Hephaestion standing at the edge of a cliff overlooking the sea. The rhythmic crash of the waves below created a steady pulse, almost like a shared heartbeat resonating through the world. "You've heard the reports," Hephaestion said, not turning around. "Darius has chosen his ground." Alexander joined him at the cliff's edge. The breeze lifted strands of his hair, and for a moment, he appeared less like a king and more like a young man contemplating the vast, unknowable nature of fate. "He thinks he has us trapped," Alexander murmured. "He might," Hephaestion conceded. "With the sea behind us, our retreat is cut off. If we fail, there will be no failure." Alexander's voice was quiet, yet it held an unwavering resolve. But tomorrow will not be won by confidence alone. They both understood what lay ahead. The Persian army, stretched across the narrow plain near the Panaris River, seemingly limitless in number, their armor and banners glinting in the sun, surrounding Darius's immense royal pavilion. Rumor suggested that the great king had gathered his family, his mother, his wife, his daughters, believing that a decisive victory would be his to celebrate by nightfall. "It's strange," Hephaestion said, his eyes narrowed thoughtfully. Darius keeps chasing a victory that proves he is king. But you fight because you already know your destiny. Alexander did not respond immediately. Instead, he scanned the horizon, watching the last vestiges of daylight fade away. Only then did he speak. Destiny, he repeated softly. Perhaps. But destiny does not fight the battle. Men do. As night deepened, the Macedonian camp grew quieter. Fires dimmed. The stars emerged, brilliant and sharp against a clear night sky. Alexander entered his tent, but did not lie down. Instead, he unfurled a map of the land surrounding ISSUS. He studied the terrain, the river crossing, the narrow plain squeezed between the sea and the mountains, the ridges where archers could gain an advantage. His fingertips moved slowly, deliberately, as he considered each possibility. Then he closed his eyes. He could almost hear the battle before it began. The clatter of shields locking into the phalanx line, the thundering hooves of companion cavalry, the sharp, panic cries of Persian troops pressed too tightly under the shadow of mountains, and somewhere, in the midst of it all, the heartbeat of the moment where two worlds would collide. Bucephalus snorted outside the tent. Alexander smiled faintly. Even the horse seemed to sense the weight of what was to come. Just before dawn, Alexander stepped outside. The air was cold, carrying the scent of sea spray and earth. The eastern sky began to brighten. The army stirred, slowly at first, then with growing energy. Men strapped on armor, tightened greaves, laced sandals, and slung shields over their shoulders. The crisp, metallic clinking of preparation filled the camp like the overture to a solemn symphony. Hephaestion approached on horseback. "It's time!" Alexander mounted Bucephalus. As he sat tall and straight, the first rays of sunlight struck the crest of his helmet, igniting it like a flame. With a firm voice carrying calm certainty, he gave the first order of the day: form the line. The Macedonian army surged forward with purpose. Alexander stared toward the distance, where Darius waited behind the river, behind an army that stretched further than the eye could follow. "This is where the world will change," Alexander whispered. And then the march began. The night before the Battle of Issus possessed a peculiar stillness, an eerie quiet that seemed to stretch across the plain like a silent warning. The Macedonian camp bustled with activity, yet the atmosphere was subdued, almost reverent. Soldiers meticulously tended to their armor, honed the edges of their swords, and meticulously checked the ropes and wheels of their siege engines. The air, however, carried more than the scent of metal and leather. It was thick with anticipation, laden with the weight of choices that could determine the fates of thousands. Alexander moved to the camp with measured steps, his dark, reflective eyes scanning each group of men. He offered brief words of encouragement to some, a subtle nod to others, and always a listening ear to those who sought his counsel. Though he had commanded campaigns before, this engagement felt different, more profound. The Persian host they were about to face was immense, far surpassing any army Alexander had previously encountered. Yet size alone was not the sole measure of strength. Strategy, morale, and the cohesion of his men were equally crucial. He carried this thought within him like a stone in his heart, neither heavy nor light, simply ever present. He found Hephaestion leaning against the tent flap, gazing out into the darkness. The young commander had always possessed a keen intuition, and tonight, his expression suggested a quiet understanding of what lay ahead. "They have chosen the ground well," Hephaestion said softly, "but not well enough." Alexander's lips curved slightly in a subtle smile. "Good terrain is useful," he replied, "but courage and discipline decide the day." The two men spoke little after that. Words seemed insufficient to capture the gravity of the moment. The Macedonian army, though ostensibly resting, was alive with a palpable energy, a subtle hum that could not be measured. The distant clatter of armor, the occasional shout of a sentry, even the low rumble of distant animals, all contributed to a subtle rhythm, a heartbeat of preparation that only those intimately familiar with war could recognize. Alexander, as much as any of his generals, could feel it coursing through the camp. This was more than a prelude. It was the first breath of the storm that would irrevocably define the future. As the hours passed, scouts returned with increasingly detailed news. Darius had established his headquarters near a strategic crossing of the Paneras River. His cavalry was numerous and well-equipped. His infantry was rigorously trained and eager for battle, and his war elephants, though small in number, loomed ominously, their massive frames cutting through the night like shadows of ancient gods. Rumors traveled quickly through the camp, spreading both anticipation and anxiety. Some claimed that Darius had gathered his family in the royal pavilion, a calculated assertion meant to inspire his own men and remind Alexander the immense stakes involved. Yet Alexander did not dwell on such pronouncements. He focused solely on the army before him, the terrain that channeled his movements, and the precise task he must execute with unwavering precision. Later that night, Alexander convened his key commanders near the central fire. Parmenion, Craterus, and other esteemed generals joined him, poring over maps spread before them, the stakes of their impending strategy etched in the soft glow of the flickering flames. "The ground is narrow," Alexander began, tracing lines across the terrain with his finger. "The Persian numbers are overwhelming. Our left flank must remain a movable and unbreakable bulwark. Our right flank will maneuver as needed, exploiting any weakness in their lines. The companion cavalry will strike where the enemy shows weakness, aiming for their heart." Parmenion listened carefully, his vast experience balancing the youthful fire of Alexander with the cool pragmatism that only years of dedicated service could provide. "We risk encirclement," he said, his eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "They could force us against the river, trapping our army with no avenue of escape." Alexander nodded, acknowledging the potential danger. "Yes, but if they attempt to encircle us, they will inevitably expose their center, creating an opening for our forces. Our phalanx will hold the line, and our companions will strike at the heart of their formation. Victory comes not from brute force alone, but from meticulous precision and unwavering discipline." The meeting broke with a quiet understanding hanging in the air. No one boasted, no one questioned the plan. Every officer present understood the profound gravity of what was to come. Alexander's brilliance lay not merely in his tactical acumen, but in the unwavering faith he inspired in his men. Every soldier knew, with unshakable certainty, that he would be where the battle demanded him most, and this knowledge, this trust, became a formidable weapon in itself. As night deepened further, Alexander walked alone to the edge of the camp, where the faint lights of the Persian forces glimmered across the darkened plain. He studied their positions, visualizing the intricate flow of battle, the cacophony of clash and command, the immense weight of decisions that would ripple through the ranks. The sight of the enemy army, vast and seemingly impenetrable, did not instill fear within him. Instead, it brought a quiet determination, a profound sense of inevitability. This confrontation was unavoidable. It was destiny shaped into flesh and blood, an encounter ordained by forces beyond mortal control. He returned to his tent as the first hint of dawn painted the eastern horizon with strokes of pale light. There, he retrieved a scroll and began meticulously reviewing the latest reports from his scouts, cross-referencing distances, terrain features, and enemy movements. Each line, each symbol on the scroll was a thread in a complex tapestry that only a mind meticulously attuned to strategy could skillfully weave together. The preparation was painstaking, meticulous, yet Alexander never lost sight of the crucial human element, the courage, resilience, and unyielding trust of the men who would fight valiantly beside him. When the camp stirred with the first movements of day, the Macedonian army began to form its ranks with practiced efficiency. Soldiers emerged from their tents, adjusted their armor, and silently took their positions in the battle line. The phalanx closed ranks with precision born from months of rigorous training, each hoplite moving as though he were an integral part of a single, unified organism. Alexander observed the unfolding scene from a slight rise, noting how every individual, every pair, every small unit flawlessly contributed to the strength and effectiveness of the whole. Hephaestion rode to his side, his expression calm yet resolute. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Alexander's gaze did not waver from the forming lines. "We are born ready," he said, his voice filled with unwavering conviction. "Now we show them what that means." At that moment, the very air seemed to tighten, charged with anticipation. A light breeze carried the mingled scents of dust and iron, of the sea and of the earth itself. Somewhere in the distance, the first Persian scouts began to stir, their banners catching the nascent sunlight and unfurling like predatory wings. The time had come. Alexander signaled with his hand, a gesture both subtle and decisive, and the Macedonian forces moved forward with controlled energy, disciplined and unyielding. The rhythmic echo of their march resonated through the valley, a resounding testament to their unwavering unity and unshakable resolve. As they approached the river and the looming enemy lines, Alexander allowed himself a fleeting moment of reflection, a pause to contemplate the immensity of what lay ahead. The battle to come would be fierce, the cost undoubtedly immense. Yet even in the face of overwhelming numbers, he felt a profound calm, a sense of certainty that transcended mortal concerns. This was not a reckless gamble, but a carefully calculated test of strategy, courage, and unity, and the Macedonian army would meet it with all the strength and determination it possessed. The sun crested fully above the horizon, its rays glinting off polished bronze armor and the sharpened heads of spears, transforming the battlefield into a scene of awe-inspiring grandeur. The plain of ISSUS lay wide before them, silent and expectant, awaiting the clash of empires. Alexander adjusted his helmet, spurred Bucephalus forward, and whispered under his breath, a quiet vow carried on the wind. Now, the world will see. And with that solemn declaration, the first lines of Macedonian soldiers marched into the embrace of the morning light, and the day of destiny began. The morning sun had ascended higher in the sky when the Macedonian army closed the distance to the Persian lines at Issus. The Panaris River, a natural barrier, snaked its way through the plain, effectively constricting the immense Persian numbers to a relatively narrow front. For a fleeting moment, the two armies faced one another in an eerie stillness, a pregnant pause that amplified the tension. The dust from the surrounding hills swirled faintly in the air, catching the sunlight and creating ephemeral patterns of gold. Soldiers on both sides made subtle adjustments to their grips on their weapons, stole glances at their comrades, and took deep, bracing breaths in anticipation of the coming storm. This quiet, heavy with unspoken anxieties, seemed almost like the calm before the world itself held its breath, poised on the precipice of chaos. Alexander, mounted majestically upon Bucephalus, surveyed the unfolding scene from a small rise near the Macedonian center. His keen eyes traced the intricate tapestry of Persian banners, their colors glittering like precious jewels adorning the backs of men and the shimmering scales of their armor. Darius himself was clearly visible within his elaborate pavilion, his figure regal and imposing, surrounded by the elite of the Persian court. The entire spectacle was meticulously designed to intimidate any foe, to crush their spirit before a single blow was struck. But Alexander felt not fear, only a keen awareness of the immense stakes involved. Hephaestion rode to his side, his gaze scanning the enemy positions with an intensity born of years of hard-won experience. "They have undeniable strength in numbers," he murmured, his voice barely audible above the rising tension. "And their war elephants are strategically positioned to break our lines. Yet our discipline, our unwavering cohesion, holds more power than their sheer mass." Alexander nodded in agreement. "It is not the elephants, nor the overwhelming numbers, that will decide the outcome of this day," he replied softly, his voice filled with quiet conviction. "It is the unyielding will of those who fight, and the flawless coordination of those who stand together as one. The Persian soldiers may be legion, but they are not unified in purpose." Across the vast plain, the Macedonian phalanx formed its dense, bristling line of spears, the rows of soldiers overlapping with precise execution, each hoplite inextricably locked into the rhythmic movements of his neighbor. The companion cavalry, Alexander's elite strike force, moved into its designated position on the right flank, poised to exploit any weakness that might appear in the enemy lines. The tension was almost palpable, a tangible force that pressed down upon the battlefield. But Alexander's unwavering presence, his calm demeanor and resolute gaze, served as a stabilizing influence, bolstering the morale of his men. His soldiers trusted him implicitly, and in the crucible of battle, that trust often outweighed even skill or superior numbers. A trumpet call echoed from the Persian side, its strident notes signaling the imminent commencement of hostilities. The air itself seemed to tighten, vibrating with the collective heartbeat of tens of thousands of warriors. With a subtle nod, a gesture that conveyed both authority and resolve, Alexander gave the long-awaited signal. The Macedonian line shifted forward with measured steps, their advance deliberate and inexorable. The clash of empires was now inevitable, a collision destined to shape the course of history. The earth trembled slightly beneath the immense weight of the advancing armies, and the metallic shimmer of thousands of spear tips reflected the morning light, transforming the battlefield into a living tide of steel. The initial encounter came swiftly and violently. Persian archers unleashed volleys of arrows, darkening the sky for a brief moment before clattering harmlessly against the sturdy Macedonian shields. The phalanx continued its relentless advance, unbroken and unwavering. Each step deliberate and synchronized, their shields locked together to form an impenetrable wall, and their spears bristling forward like a forest of deadly spikes. The disciplined cohesion of the Macedonians transformed their potential vulnerability into a virtually impenetrable fortress, and the Persian infantry, despite their overwhelming numbers, found themselves unable to pierce the advancing ranks. Alexander observed the unfolding battle with an almost clinical focus, dissecting each movement and analyzing each tactical shift. Yet beneath that cool exterior, there was an undeniable undercurrent of emotion, a deep recognition of the extraordinary human effort unfolding around him. Soldiers fell on both sides, some struck down by arrows, others by the brutal clash of spears. Each loss was acknowledged with subtle nod, a silent vow to carry the struggle forward and honor the fallen. The battlefield was a scene of utter chaos and deafening noise, yet every man in the phalanx moved as a single, unified entity, their actions dictated by instinct and training. Unity was their greatest weapon, an intangible force that amplified their individual strengths and compensated for their relative lack of numbers. Then the companion cavalry, Alexander's elite shock troops, struck with the force of a thunderbolt. With a sudden surge of speed and power, Alexander personally led the charge against the Persian left flank, targeting the point where their line appeared weakest. The ground trembled beneath the thundering hooves of the war horses. Spears were lowered in anticipation of the impact, and a wave of unstoppable force crashed into the enemy lines. The initial impact shattered their formation, sending soldiers scattering in disarray. The momentum of the charge built with each passing moment, unstoppable once unleashed. Alexander himself moved with calculated aggression, seeking out the key command points within the Persian lines, aiming to disrupt their coordination and sow chaos at the very heart of their army. Darius watched the unfolding events from his elevated position, a growing sense of unease creasing his brow. His army was undeniably vast, yet the narrow plain in Alexander's relentless, multifaceted strategy had effectively constrained his movements, limiting his ability to bring his full weight to bear. Every maneuver, every counterattack, was met with precisely calculated response and an unwavering force that challenged even his considerable experience. The Persian elephants attempted to break the Macedonian center, but the disciplined formations simply shifted around them, neutralizing the threat with minimal losses. Darius's shock must have been immense as he began to realize that the young commander before him, seemingly untested and inexperienced, had orchestrated a ballet of war that defied the conventional wisdom of sheer numbers. Hours passed in a blur of deafening noise and frantic movement. Individual clashes erupted and dissolved in microcosms of combat, some at the front lines, others at the flanks, with Alexander and his skilled generals continually adapting to the ever-changing circumstances. Parmenion skillfully reinforced the vulnerable left flank, Craterus expertly adjusted the center to maintain its integrity, and companion cavalry continued their relentless strikes, exploiting every weakness that appeared in the enemy lines. Coordination, discipline, and unwavering bravery turned the tide of battle slowly but inexorably. And then came the defining moment, the pivotal turning point that would forever alter the course of history. Alexander, his gaze unwavering, his mind focused, identified Darius himself within the royal pavilion, a resplendent symbol of Persian command and pride. With a subtle but unmistakable signal, he dispatched a portion of the cavalry forward, directly threatening the person of the Persian king. This audacious maneuver caused immediate confusion and consternation within the enemy ranks. Officers argued, soldiers hesitated, and the once tight cohesion of the Persian army began to visibly fracture. Panic spread like wildfire as the Macedonian forces relentlessly pressed their advantage, cutting through poorly coordinated contingents and isolating sections of the Persian army from one another. Darius, faced with the imminent threat of capture or death, made a fateful choice that would mark the course of history. He withdrew from the battlefield, whether driven by a primal instinct to preserve his own life or because fear had finally overwhelmed his strategic acumen. His sudden decision left the Persian center exposed and vulnerable. The Macedonian forces, sensing the opportunity, immediately intensified their pressure, driving deep into the heart of the enemy formation. The phalanx held firm where necessary, allowing the cavalry to exploit the newly created openings with devastating effect. The battlefield became a theater of precise and brutal violence, each movement a testament to years of disciplined training, careful foresight, and extraordinary courage. By mid-afternoon, the outcome of the battle was no longer in doubt. The Persian army, despite its vast size, had been fragmented, outmaneuvered, and decisively defeated. Retreating soldiers fled in disarray toward the northern hills, while the exhausted but triumphant Macedonian soldiers secured their hard-won positions and moved swiftly to maintain order, preventing the chaos from overwhelming their hard-earned advantage. The cost of victory had been immense, but the prize belonged unmistakably to Alexander. The young king had proven beyond any doubt that superior strategy, unwavering unity, and decisive leadership could indeed overcome a force far greater in size and reputation. Alexander rode slowly among his men, acknowledging their bravery without grand or theatrical gestures. He understood that the battle had been won by the individual courage of each soldier, by their unwavering loyalty, and by their unshakable trust in their commander. Victory was not his alone. It belonged to the entire Macedonian army, united in purpose and resolute in action. Yet Alexander also fully comprehended profound responsibility that came with such a momentous triumph. The countless lives lost, the immense weight of command that rested upon his shoulders, and the chilling knowledge that the path forward would demand even greater sacrifices. As the sun began its slow descent toward the horizon, Alexander looked out over the ravaged battlefield, his brilliant mind already contemplating the next phase of the campaign. Darius had managed to escape, but the very foundation of his army had been shattered, irreparably damaged by the Macedonian victory. The great king remained alive, but his aura of invincibility had been irrevocably challenged and diminished. Alexander's grand vision of conquest, his audacious dream of uniting the known world under his rule, had taken a decisive step forward, propelled by the blood and sacrifice of his loyal troops. And still, amidst the swirling dust, the mournful cries of the wounded, and the scattered banners of Persia, Alexander felt a profound weight of what had been accomplished, the heavy burden of leadership that would forever mark his destiny. This was no ordinary victory. It was a powerful statement, a clear signal to the world that the Macedonian king was not merely a common commander, but a force of nature capable of reshaping the very fabric of history. And in that defining moment, Alexander truly understood that each battle, each carefully considered choice, each heartbreaking sacrifice was but a single brushstroke in a larger design, an ambitious vision that he was now irrevocably determined to see through to its ultimate and glorious end. As the sun finally dipped behind the distant hills, casting long, ominous shadows across the ravaged battlefield, fires were lit to tend to the wounded, to provide warmth for the weary and to honor the dead. Soldiers tended to one another with quiet compassion, acknowledging the immense cost of the day's victory. Alexander, however, remained astride Bucephalus, gazing intently at the darkening horizon. The victory at ISSUS had undeniably changed the world, but a long and arduous journey was far from complete. He felt the irresistible pull of destiny, the silent but insistent call to continue onward, to press further into hard Persian lands, and meet whatever new challenges awaited him with the same unwavering resolve, courage, and clarity that had guided him through this first monumental confrontation. And as night fell, the Macedonian king whispered to himself, a quiet promise carried on the wind. This is only the beginning. The morning after the bloody battle of ISSUS dawned with strange and unsettling calm, as if the very earth itself had exhaled a collective sigh of relief. The surviving elements of the Macedonian army moved purposefully among the grim remnants of the shattered Persian forces, diligently tending to the wounded on both sides, carefully collecting the bodies of the fallen to be given proper burial, and securing the vast quantities of supplies that had been abandoned in the Persians' hasty retreat. The battlefield, which just yesterday had been a scene of unimaginable chaos and unspeakable fury, now possessed the quiet dignity of aftermath, a somber tableau that spoke volumes about the cost of conquest. Fires smoldered in scattered encampments, sending plumes of smoke into the clear sky, and a lingering scent of trampled grass mingled with a coppery tang of blood, creating a pungent aroma that hung heavy in the warm morning breeze. Alexander rode slowly along the sprawling lines of his victorious army, observing his men with a complex mixture of pride and solemnity. Victory had been extraordinarily hard won, purchased with the blood and sacrifice of countless brave soldiers, and every survivor now carried the indelible memory of what they had endured etched into their minds. Some soldiers walked with heavy, weary steps, their armor scratched and dented from the day's brutal fighting. Others attended to their fallen comrade with tenderness and care, binding grievous wounds or offering comforting words of solace to those who mourned. It was a scene that required no pomp or ostentatious display, for the profound gravity of the army's achievement was self-evident in each weary action, in each fleeting glance, in each silent acknowledgment exchange between battle-hardened men. The young king's thoughts were far from idle as he surveyed the battlefield. He pondered the implications of Darius's escape, noting the remarkable speed with which the Persian king had withdrawn from the field and the meticulous measures he had taken to preserve his own life. Darius remained a formidable threat, a cunning and experienced adversary who had now witnessed firsthand the effectiveness of Alexander's unconventional leadership and the unparalleled discipline of his Macedonian army. The bloody encounter at Issus had undeniably shifted the balance of power, but it had by no means brought an end to the long and arduous campaign. Alexander fully understood that victory in a single battle, no matter how decisive, was but a single step in a long and treacherous journey, a journey fraught with numerous unforeseen obstacles, numerous potential dangers, and numerous nagging uncertainties. He paused near the center of the sprawling camp, where the valiant companion cavalry had regrouped after their pivotal role in the day's fighting. The men were meticulously cleaning their sweat-soaked horses, carefully checking their weapons for damage, and exchanging brief but insightful words about the strategies they had employed and the lessons they had learned. The cavalry, under Alexander's direct command, had played a crucial role in shattering the Persian lines, and their unwavering coordination and unyielding courage had made all the difference in achieving the momentous victory. Alexander dismounted from Bucephalus, walking slowly among them to offer his quiet praise. He did not speak of empty glory or bestow meaningless titles. Instead, he spoke of the men's unwavering duty to their comrades, of the precision and skill with which they had executed their maneuvers, and a profound understanding that each individual action, no matter how small, had contributed to the overall success of the army. "Your selfless efforts," he said softly, his voice filled with genuine gratitude, transformed the chaos of battle into a triumph of order. Remember this, always, every soldier, every perfectly timed movement, every crucial choice mattered, and together you achieved what seemed impossible. The men listened intently, not with any expectation of personal reward, but with a deep understanding that their actions had been fully acknowledged and appreciated by a leader who shared the heavy burden of command, and who had risked his own life alongside them on the field of battle. Alexander's constant presence, his unwavering commitment to his men, served as a potent reminder that true victory was born not from mere numbers alone, but from the unwavering unity of purpose and the unparalleled discipline of those who fought together as one indivisible force. In the distance, the shattered remnants of the once proud Persian army were beginning to slowly gather, regrouping under the uncertain cover of the distant northern hills. Scouts reported that Darius had moved quickly, intending to fortify new positions further inland and to gather whatever forces he could muster to continue the fight. Though his army had been severely diminished and his aura of invincibility shattered, the great king still remained a powerful figure, a symbol of Persian resistance that Alexander could not afford to underestimate. Alexander carefully considered the strategic implications of the situation, weighing the various options that lay before him. The stunning victory at Issus had undeniably disrupted the Persian forces, but it also revealed the remarkable resilience of an opponent who, despite suffering a major setback, would undoubtedly continue to challenge the Macedonians at every turn. He turned his gaze toward the east, toward the heart of the vast Persian Empire, and began to imagine the great cities and, here's the creatively rewritten translation, with a touch of interpretive expansion. Alexander remained mindful of the strongholds and bastions that still awaited them. Each conquest required a blend of innovation, stamina, and unwavering patience. Yet, Alexander felt no trepidation. The day's battle had only reinforced his long-held conviction that resolute leadership, unwavering courage, and a meticulously calculated strategy could conquer even the most formidable challenges. The day's event stood as a powerful testament to the strength found in unity, and this realization instilled confidence in every decision he had yet to make. As the afternoon sun bathed the plain in its warmth, Alexander assembled his generals for a strategic council. Maps were unfurled across a large wooden table, and the discussion commenced with reconnaissance reports, detailed analyses of enemy positions, and logistical considerations for sustaining the army on foreign soil. Parmenion spoke with caution, stressing the need for vigilance and meticulous planning. Craterus proposed measures to fortify supply lines and reinforce their positions. Each contribution was thoughtfully considered, and Alexander carefully weighed each, balancing prudence with the audacity that had defined his approach throughout the campaign. "Darius will not remain idle," Alexander declared, his voice steady but imbued with command. "He will recover his strength and regroup his forces. Our mission is to maintain relentless pressure, exploit any vulnerabilities, and anticipate his every move. Victory lies not in a single battle, but in the interconnected series of actions that will ultimately shape the entire campaign." The discussion then turned to morale and logistics. Alexander emphasized the importance of nurturing the army spirit, tending to the wounded with care, and ensuring every soldier understood the significance of their individual role. He spoke not of conquest driven by mere ambition, but of responsibility, of the necessity to lead with integrity and awareness. His words transcended simple commands. They were guidance, reminders that the strength of an army resided not only in its weaponry or numbers, but in the hearts and minds of those who wielded them. As the council concluded, Alexander once again walked amongst his men. The sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the plain. Fires were kindled to provide warmth and illumination, and the gentle murmur of conversations mingled with the distant calls of the sentries. Alexander paused at the camp's edge, observing the horizon where the remnants of the Persian army could be seen retreating. A temporary calm had settled over the land, yet he knew it would not last. Darius would inevitably retaliate, as would the unpredictable hand of fate that seemed to shadow every step of his campaign. Nightfall ushered in a period of reflection. Alexander retired to his tent, but rest was not his immediate pursuit. Instead, he meticulously reviewed maps and reports, considering possible maneuvers, anticipating enemy responses, and planning for the days to come. Every detail held significance. The strategic position of a hill, the width of a river crossing, the morale within a unit. In this quiet deliberation, he prepared for the challenges that lay ahead, recognizing that the victory at ISSUS was merely a prelude to the greater trials yet to come. Yet amidst the strategic calculations and contemplative planning, Alexander allowed himself a moment of human introspection. He thought of the soldiers who had fought with valor, of the families who would soon hear news of the battle, and of the lives touched by both heroism and tragedy. War was not an abstract concept. It was a lived reality, deeply felt and resolutely endured. And in this acknowledgement, he found not despair, but a profound sense of purpose, a steadfast commitment to lead with clarity, courage, and honor. Finally, as the stars began to punctuate the night sky, Alexander stepped outside. The camp was quiet, save for the gentle crackle of the fires and the soft rustle of the evening breeze. The victory at ISSUS had been decisive, yet he knew the road ahead would demand even greater resolve. The Persian army, though shaken, remained a formidable force, and Darius himself continued to loom as a figure of significant influence and power. Alexander's mind traced the possible courses of the campaign, yet he remained calm, grounded by the understanding that preparation, leadership, and unity would guide the army through whatever trials awaited. He mounted Bucephalus once more and rode slowly along the perimeter of the camp. Soldiers greeted him with nods, some offering quiet smiles, others acknowledging the shared hardships of the day. Alexander returned each gesture with humility and respect. He understood that the true strength of victory resided not in the glory of conquest, but in the shared experience of endurance, courage, and an unwavering commitment to one another. As he paused atop a gentle rise overlooking the battlefield, Alexander whispered to himself, The road continues. The challenge grows. And we will meet it. The plain of Issus, scarred by battle yet vibrant with the presence of the Macedonian army, stretched before him. The victory had shifted the balance of power, but it had also underscored the ongoing responsibilities of leadership, the delicate equilibrium of strategy, courage, and the well-being of those entrusted to his command. And in that moment, Alexander understood that every battle served as a lesson, every victory a stepping stone, and every decision an indelible mark upon the tapestry of history. With that quiet resolve, he turned Bucephalus toward the camp, ready to guide his men through the night and to face the challenges that tomorrow and the days beyond would inevitably bring. The days that followed the Battle of Issus were a period characterized by both triumph and thoughtful reflection. While the Macedonian army had undeniably secured a significant victory, Alexander remained keenly aware that the campaign was far from its conclusion. The Persian king had managed to escape, leaving behind a force that, though shaken, was still considerable. Alexander's mind, perpetually attuned to both opportunities and risks, carefully considered the possibilities of pursuit, the vital need to secure supply lines, and the delicate balance between measured caution and bold audacity. In the early morning hours, with the skies still adorned with the faint colors of dawn, he rode among his men. The soldiers were diligently preparing for the march ahead, adjusting their armor, inspecting their weapons, and ensuring their formations were perfectly aligned. Each man carried the weight of the recent battle, the haunting memories of fallen comrades, the profound exhaustion from relentless marches, and the sobering knowledge that the coming days would demand as much, if not more, from them. Yet, interwoven with these burdens was a palpable sense of pride, a quiet satisfaction derived from having faced an overwhelmingly superior enemy and emerging victorious. Alexander took a moment to speak with some of the younger soldiers. Their eyes, though reflecting fatigue, sparkled with a mixture of awe and unwavering determination. "You have performed admirably," he said softly. "But remember, the battle does not conclude on the field. The choices you make now will shape the victories of tomorrow." He emphasized the crucial importance of maintaining constant vigilance. The Persian forces, despite their retreat, were far from defeated. Darius would undoubtedly regroup, fortify his positions, and make every effort to regain the initiative. Consequently, Alexander's strategy required not only unwavering courage in battle, but also astute foresight, steadfast discipline, and a relentless drive to maintain unyielding pressure on the enemy. The Macedonian army moved with unwavering purpose, each soldier acutely aware that every step, every maneuver, was a meticulously calculated contribution to a much larger, overarching plan. The march to pursue the Persians was both physically demanding and mentally taxing. The rugged terrain of Cilicia and the surrounding regions relentlessly tested the endurance of both men and animals. Intense heat, uneven pathways, and scarce resources necessitated meticulous management. Ever attentive to these challenges, Alexander ensured that logistics were efficiently organized, that water and provisions were carefully rationed, and that the morale of the troops remained remarkably high. Leadership was demonstrated not only through strategic brilliance, but also through small acts of care and careful observation that enabled the army to function as a cohesive and unified whole. As the Macedonians advanced, scouts diligently reported the movements of the Persian army. Darius had strategically chosen to withdraw toward the interior, fortifying his positions near key cities. The intelligence meticulously gathered by Alexander's reconnaissance teams proved invaluable, allowing him to anticipate the enemy's maneuvers and adapt his plans accordingly. Each report was carefully analyzed, each decision thoughtfully considered, with both immediate and long-term implications in mind. The victory at Issus had not been a matter of mere chance. It was a direct result of meticulous preparation, keen observation, and profound understanding of both his own forces and those of the enemy. During the march, Alexander reflected deeply on the profound significance of Issus. It was far more than simply a battle won. It stood as a powerful demonstration of the effectiveness of strategy, leadership, and cohesion when facing an overwhelming numerical disadvantage. The Persian army, while undoubtedly powerful, had found its vast size and splendor insufficient against disciplined troops guided by a visionary commander. Alexander understood that success in this campaign would depend not only on future victories, but also on the ability to learn from each encounter, to adapt to changing circumstances, and to apply insightful knowledge with precision and foresight. At night, the Macedonian camp was alive with quiet activity. Fires burned steadily, providing warmth and much-needed light. Soldiers shared stories, tended to their wounds, and reflected on the day's challenging events. Alexander moved among them, observing, listening intently, and offering words of encouragement. His presence was steadying. He did not boast of past victories, nor did he dwell unnecessarily on the ever-present dangers. Instead, he offered guidance, reassurance, and sincere acknowledgement of the sacrifices that had been made. Leadership, he understood, was as much about empathy and deep understanding as it was about strategic planning and decisive command. The psychological impact of the victory was profound. Macedonian soldiers, once apprehensive about facing a vastly larger force, now carried themselves with newfound confidence in their commander and in one another. The Persian army, in stark contrast, had suffered a significant blow to both its morale and its reputation. Darius had managed to survive, but the aura of invincibility that had once surrounded him had been irrevocably challenged. Alexander fully understood that perception, unwavering courage, and decisive action were as critical to achieving success as physical force. The Battle of Issus would be remembered not only for tactical victory it represented, but also for the inspiring demonstration of leadership and unity that had made it possible. In the days that followed, Alexander began meticulously planning the next phase of campaign. The strategic positioning of fortified positions, the securing of vital supply lines, and the careful deployment of troops all required meticulous attention. Yet, even as he focused intently on logistics and strategic planning, he remained acutely attuned to the human dimension of war, the overall well-being of his men, the compassionate care of the wounded, and the unwavering maintenance of morale were all integral to sustaining the demanding campaign. Alexander's approach seamlessly combined meticulous planning with genuine personal attention, ensuring that the army remained cohesive, disciplined, and fully prepared to challenges that lay ahead. Gazing toward the distant horizon, Alexander thoughtfully contemplated the arduous road leading to Darius's heartlands. The Persian king would undoubtedly not yield easily. Every city, every region would offer stiff resistance. Yet, the resounding victory at Issus had firmly established a winning pattern. Disciplined leadership, strategic insight, and the unwavering courage of individual soldiers could consistently overcome numerical superiority. Alexander understood that history was not merely shaped by brute force, but by the carefully orchestrated combination of countless actions, crucial decisions, and defining moments of unwavering resolve. As night fell, the Macedonian army rested, and Alexander took a solitary moment to observe the vast expanse of stars above. The quiet night stood in stark contrast to the chaotic intensity of battle, yet it carried with a profound sense of continuity, of destiny stretching far beyond the immediate campaign. The victory at Issus was a pivotal milestone, a moment of crystalline clarity in a long and challenging journey toward unifying the known world. And in that reflective calm, Alexander keenly felt the immense weight of responsibility, the unwavering awareness that every choice, every command, and every sacrifice would leave a lasting and indelible imprint upon the pages of history. Finally, as the fires gently dimmed and the camp grew still, Alexander whispered quietly to himself, "The world will remember this day, not for the soldiers alone, but for the remarkable unity that made victory possible." And the journey, ever onward, continues. He rose purposefully, turned toward the distant horizon, and prepared to guide his army onward into the challenging lands that lay ahead, with the same unwavering resolve, indomitable courage, and visionary leadership that had defined the historic day of Issus.